Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, unveiling the signs of the end times. In the realm of biblical prophecy, few images are as compelling and ominous as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Described in the book of Revelation, these figures are not merely symbols of myth or legend, but embodiments of profound forces that will, according to Scripture, usher in the final cataclysmic events of human history. Understanding their significance is crucial as we seek to interpret the signs of our times and prepare for what may lie ahead. The Four Horsemen are introduced in Revelation 6, 1 through 8, each representing different aspects of the impending apocalypse. Their arrival marks the beginning of a period known as the Great Tribulation, a time of unparalleled suffering and upheaval. The first horseman rides a white horse, holding a bow and wearing a crown. Traditionally interpreted as a symbol of conquest, this figure represents the power of a global ruler who will appear to bring peace, but will ultimately usher in a period of false security and tyranny. This figure is often associated with the Antichrist, who will emerge as a charismatic leader promising harmony but leading to widespread deception and domination. Although we have not yet seen this figure in full force, the increasing centralization of power and the rise of authoritarian tendencies around the world hint at the possible fulfillment of this prophecy. However, the Bible also presents an alternative interpretation. The rider on the white horse is sometimes viewed as Christ, coming to bring final judgment and divine resolution. This perspective emphasizes the white horse's symbolism of purity, righteousness, and divine authority. Christ, as the conqueror, represents the ultimate phase of history when he returns to assert his authority and execute divine justice. The white horse signifies purity and righteousness, reflecting Christ's role in fulfilling God's promises and bringing a conclusive end to the conflicts and trials of the preceding eras. This moment marks the culmination of divine plans and the final reckoning for all of humanity. Reconciling these interpretations offers a nuanced understanding of the apocalyptic vision, reflecting both the challenges of the human condition and the ultimate resolution promised by divine authority. The second horseman rides a fiery red horse and wields a great sword, symbolizing war and violence. This figure is granted the power to remove peace from the earth, leading to global conflict and bloodshed. The world today is rife with unrest, conflicts, and divisions that reflect the prelude to the widespread violence foretold. As nations grapple with internal strife and external conflicts, the shadow of this horseman's influence becomes ever more apparent. The third horseman rides a black horse and carries a pair of scales, symbolizing famine and economic distress. The black horse, often associated with mourning and scarcity, signifies the gravity of the coming economic crisis. The scales represent the act of measuring and rationing, indicating a time when basic necessities become scarce and must be carefully distributed. This imagery reflects a world where food and resources are in short supply, and their distribution is controlled and weighed with precision, revealing the severity of the crisis. In Revelation 6, 5-6, the scales are used to measure the cost of wheat and barley, essential staples in ancient diets. The passage states, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not damage the oil and the wine." A denarius was a day's wage for a laborer, meaning that a person's daily earnings would barely cover the cost of basic sustenance. This highlights the extreme inflation and economic distress foretold by the Black Horseman. The scales represent the rationing of resources during times of extreme scarcity. Inflation, where prices rise sharply, while the value of money decreases, is a key indicator of the Black Horseman's influence. The high cost of basic foodstuffs like wheat and barley reflects an economic situation where essentials become unaffordable for many, exacerbating hunger and poverty. The act of measuring food with scales underscores the need for rationing during periods of famine. This scenario reflects a world where resources are severely limited, and governments or authorities must implement systems to allocate available supplies. The scarcity of food leads to increased competition for resources and widespread suffering among populations. The Black Horseman's arrival signifies not only famine, but also deepening economic inequality. In times of severe economic crisis, the rich may hoard resources while the poor face starvation and deprivation. This disparity highlights the broader social impact of economic collapse, with marginalized communities suffering the most. The dire economic conditions described in the passage of the Black Horseman may also be linked to the concept of the mark of the beast, mentioned later in Revelation 13:16-17. According to this passage, the mark of the beast is a system that controls buying and selling, reflecting the power of a tyrannical leader or system to dictate economic transactions. The economic distress seen in the Black Horseman's vision, where only the wealthy can afford basic necessities, may be exacerbated by this control mechanism. In contemporary discussions about economic control and surveillance, some leaders have drawn parallels with the apocalyptic imagery of the mark of the beast. For instance, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley has remarked on the intersection of economic power and government control, stating, "When governments and large corporations collaborate to control every aspect of economic life, it raises concerns about privacy and individual freedom." This kind of centralized control can echo the apocalyptic visions of economic domination found in Revelation. This quote highlights concerns about the consolidation of economic power and its potential to impact individual freedoms, resonating with the themes of control and rationing depicted by the Black Horseman. It suggests that contemporary issues of economic control and surveillance could reflect prophetic warnings about the coming trials. History is replete with examples of famine and economic collapse that align with the imagery of the Black Horseman. For instance, the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 in Europe led to widespread starvation, social unrest, and economic turmoil. Similarly, the economic crises of the 20th century, including the Great Depression of the 1930s, saw significant inflation and scarcity, echoing the dire conditions foretold by the Black Horseman. In recent years, rising inflation and economic instability have highlighted some of the signs associated with the Black Horseman. The period from 2021 to 2022 witnessed significant inflationary pressures, with essential goods becoming increasingly expensive. Supply chain disruptions, coupled with geopolitical tensions and natural disasters, have exacerbated food shortages and economic hardships. The global economy faces several challenges that align with the Black Horseman's warnings. Persistent inflation has led to higher prices for essential goods, impacting the cost of living and contributing to economic strain. This inflation reflects the extreme price increases foretold by the Black Horseman's scales. Disruptions in food supply chains and agricultural production have led to increased food prices and shortages in various regions. These issues echo the scarcity and rationing depicted by the Black Horseman. The widening gap between rich and poor has been exacerbated by economic crises, with vulnerable populations experiencing the greatest hardship. This disparity highlights the impact of economic collapse on marginalized communities. In addressing the challenges posed by inflation and economic instability, President Joe Biden stated, "The American people are resilient, and we are committed to fighting inflation and ensuring that the economy works for everyone, not just the wealthy few." This quote reflects contemporary efforts to address economic challenges and support those affected by rising prices and scarcity, resonating with the concerns symbolized by the Black Horseman. The Black Horseman's appearance prompts reflection on biblical teachings regarding provision and justice. Scripture emphasizes God's role as a provider and caretaker, even in times of scarcity. For instance, Psalms 23 speaks of God's provision and guidance through challenging times, while Matthew 6:25-34 reassures believers of God's care and provision, encouraging trust in His ability to meet our needs. The prophetic warning of the Black Horseman calls for practical and spiritual preparedness. Believers are encouraged to seek wisdom in managing resources, support those in need, and cultivate a spirit of generosity and resilience. In times of economic distress, the call to faith and trust in God's provision becomes increasingly important. The fourth and final horseman rides a pale horse, and his name is Death, followed closely by Hades. This figure is granted power to kill a quarter of the Earth's population through sword, famine, plague, and wild beasts. The vulnerabilities to disease, disaster, and violence that we see today are mere shadows of the devastation that this horseman will bring. The magnitude of death and destruction foretold is beyond anything currently witnessed, but the increasing frequency and intensity of natural and man-made disasters suggest a harbinger of what is to come.